The war had barely begun when Robb Stark made the most dangerous decision of his young rule. The banners of the North had only just been called, and the lords still rode in confusion, some doubting, some grieving. But one thing rang truer than war cries, the pain in his mother's voice when she said, "They have my girls." Robb had always been the dutiful son, the heir, the wolf pup raised to lead. But that night in Riverrun, with his war council still drunk on strategy and pride, he stood by the godswood alone, whispering to the cold air like it could carry his guilt away. He knew that marching south was not just for Ned Stark, it was for Sansa and Arya, trapped in the lion's den, at the mercy of Queen Cersei and the vipers of court. But armies don't sneak. Armies don't hide. So Robb didn't send an army. He sent shadows, 5 men, northern blood, loyal to House Stark beyond reason or reward. They weren't knights, but killers who had sworn steel for Winterfell. Men of the old gods. 2 of them had never spoken a word in years. One had fought in the Greyjoy rebellion with Ned himself. They would ride with no banners, no names, only one goal: bring the girls home or never return at all. And he sent them with a secret, a letter written in Robb's own hand, sealed with wax and heartbreak, meant for his sisters only. It said, "Come home, before the war swallows us all." They slipped past Lannister patrols with the silence of snow, avoided the main roads, slept in forests, ate what they hunted. They knew the South hated Northerners, but they didn't care. Hate was easier to dodge than steal. But King's Landing was a place that swallowed men whole, even before they reached the gates. They'd lost one, a quiet lad named Searan, who took a crossbow bolt to the ribs from a gold cloak near the Black Water. No one stopped to bury him. They couldn't afford to. His blood was still drying on the saddle when they entered the city. The streets of King's Landing stank worse than they imagined. Sewage, sweat, and secrets. The capital wasn't made for wolves, it was a pit for rats. They posed as sellswords and peddlers, sleeping in brothels and pigsties. And slowly, carefully, they began to whisper the names. Arya, Stark. It was then they realized. Only one name brought fear. Sansa was known, the girl betrothed to Joffrey, the quiet rose of Winterfell, now blooming in a garden of thorns. But Arya vanished. No one knew where she was, not even the Lannisters. Said she fled the day Ned was beheaded. Some said she was dead. Only one of the 5, a grim bastard named Marek Snow, believed otherwise. "She's alive," he growled one night as they drank stale ale in a rat cellar beneath Fleabottom. "Wolves don't die in cages. She's run in, just like her father taught her." But time was running short. The court was changing. Joffrey's madness was rising. Spies doubled. Gold cloaks grew crueler. And the Lannisters were watching. Everything. Whispers reached even the walls of the Red Keep. Sansa Stark receives northern birds. The Queen suspects a plot. 3 Northmen seen near the Sept. Then one morning, in a crowded alley behind a butcher's stall, 2 of Robb's men were found hanging by their necks, tongues cut out, faces flayed. Below their swaying boots was a message scrawled in blood. The North remembers, but the South devours. Only 2 remained now. Marek Snow and an older warrior named Elric Reedsworn, not to Howland Reed, but a distant cousin with his own oaths to keep. Elric had seen death before, but this was the kind of quiet doom that made the old gods weep. They had to choose. Stay in the city, search for ghosts, or risk it all for one chance to reach Sansa. She was the only known piece left on the board. And according to whispers, her life was about to change again. Wedding plans, cruel hands, a crown soaked in poison. They had one shot, and failure would mean more than death. It would mean the Lannisters knowing Robb Stark had reached for his sisters, and that would bring war faster than winter. The air in King's Landing grew hotter with tension, though. The skies were grey, and the winds had begun to whisper of winter. In the alleys and underways, the last two Northmen, Marek, Snow, and Elric, Reed, moved like smoke, unseen and unwelcome. They didn't speak much anymore. They couldn't. Eyes were everywhere. The gold cloaks were restless, and Varys' little. Birds sang louder than ever. Elric warned Marek, "One wrong step and we don't die, we disappear." Marek only grunted. He knew what disappearing meant in this city. It meant silence, torture, a body never found. But they had no choice now. The message left under their comrades' hanging corpses had made that clear. Still, a thread of hope remained. A merchant's son named Tobo, who cleaned stables near the Red Keep, claimed to have seen Sansa Stark from afar. "She walks with the Queen Regent," he whispered, eyes darting, head down. "Looks sad, always. Like she's sleeping with ghosts." That was enough. Elric and Marek watched the Red Keep from rooftops and wine stalls. Each time Sansa was brought out, mostly in the company of Cersei or Septa Mordain, they took note of the guards, the routes, the timing. The patterns were tight. Sansa was well guarded, and worse, she was watched with something deeper than fear. She was being controlled. But what haunted Marek most was the look in her eyes, the way she kept them low, as if she didn't dare to hope anymore, as if she had forgotten the North. "I've seen prisoners," Marek muttered, as he carved into a stale heel of bread one night. Real ones, shackled men, beaten. They still had fight, but that girl, he didn't finish the sentence. Elric placed his hand on the pouch hanging from his neck. Inside was Robb's letter, the one meant for his sisters. "She remember once she reads this," he said softly. "Even ghosts remember home." Their plan was madness. They both knew it. They couldn't storm the Red Keep. They couldn't wait for Arya, who remained nothing more than a rumor. So they would gamble everything on a single night, a single moment, when Sansa would be taken to the Sept for prayers. She would be guarded, yes, but not like in the keep. That would be their chance. It would mean killing. It would mean blood. In the streets. But Marek was a Snow of the North. He was born to spill blood, and Elric he had sworn to Robb. But more than that, to Lyanna's memory. The Starks had guarded secrets for generations. They wouldn't fail now. The night came under a new moon. Darkness held the city like a breath, waiting to exhale. Sansa, veiled in blue, was led by two guards and the scepter through the narrow streets. Toward the Sept of Baelor, Marek struck first, quick, clean. A dagger through the ribs of the first guard as he turned a corner. The second turned in time to cry out, but Elric's spear silenced him before the sound could echo. Sansa froze. The scepter screamed, but Marek seized her, pressing steel to her throat. "One sound," he growled, "and you'll never speak again." Sansa's lips trembled. Her eyes, wide and unsure, searched their faces. "Elric Reed," the older man said, breathless, "of the neck, sent by your brother Robb." She didn't believe it. Not at first. Her hands clutched her cloak like it might protect her from lies. "Robb," she whispered, her voice small. "You're lying. He's at war." "He wouldn't, he would," Elric said, pulling the letter from his pouch. "He did. Sansa stared at the seal. The direwolf of Stark, the wax slightly cracked from the journey, but whole. Her fingers shook as she opened it. She read the first line, then she cried, but they had no time for tears. They were already late, already being hunted. A patrol of gold cloaks rounded the street below. One of them saw the body. The horn blew once, then twice. Elric Marek hissed, "We move." Now Sansa had no choice. She went with them, but the city was not built for wolves, and every path out was fire and blade. They fled through the black cells, through sewers, thick with rot, guided by rats and prayer. By dawn, word had spread. Sansa Stark had vanished, and with her disappearance, the wrath of the Lannisters would burn like wildfire. They emerged from the sewers smelling like death. Sansa was pale, shaking, her hair matted with filth and fear, but her steps didn't falter. Not after reading Robb's letter. It had reminded her who she was, Stark of Winterfland. What had been stolen from her? Marek led the way, sword drawn and eyes sharp. Elric stayed close behind, limping slightly from the chaos of the escape. The city behind them had erupted. Bells rang across King's Landing like screams in metal form. The guards were sweeping every alley, every barn, every market stall. Sansa Stark was missing, and the Lannisters wanted blood. They couldn't stay in the open. "We head to the river gate," Marek whispered. "Fast. I've got a horse hidden outside the city walls. Enough for one. The rest we run." Elric stopped. "Only one horse. I didn't think we'd make it this far." The river gate was chaos. Refugees, traders, and farmers cluttered the roads, all trying to leave before the gates were shut tight. The smoke from the city made everything look like dusk, and that helped them. Faces were hard to see in the haze. They kept Sansa covered, dressed like a baker's daughter, face hidden in soot and a scarf. But every guard they passed made her tense. Every shouted order made her flinch. Her time with Joffrey had taught her one truth. In King's Landing, fear had eyes everywhere. They almost made it. A boy maybe 12 ran past Marek and crashed into Sansa. She stumbled. The scarf fell. For a second, just a flicker. Her face was exposed, and one of the guards saw it. That girl stop her. Marek didn't hesitate. He slashed the nearest guard across the chest, blood spraying into the crowd. Screams followed. People fled in every direction. Elric grabbed Sansa's arm, pulling her hard through the panicked mob. Then a horn blew again, loud, long, a sound. That meant only one thing, royal alert. "They know it's her," Elric barked. They bolted. Not through the gate, they'd never make it now, but down a side road. Into the old part of town where the stones were broken and the buildings wept rain through cracked roofs. Dogs barked. Doors slammed shut. No one wanted to help a Stark. Not here, not with gold promised for her return. Sansa ran as hard as she could. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Behind them, footsteps closed in. Gold cloaks. 5, 10. More. Elric slowed. "Go," he said, pressing something into Marek's hand. "Take her." Marek looked down. A small vial of black liquid. "What the hell is this?" "Nightshade," Elric said, calmly. "Enough to stop her heart, if they catch her. She'll sleep before they take her back to the Queen." Sansa's eyes widened. "No, run," Elric shouted. Then he turned, drawing his old spear, and charged into the mouth of death. Marek didn't argue. He grabbed Sansa's hand and ran, swallowing the lump in his throat as the sound of Elric's last stand echoed behind them. They didn't look back. An hour later, they reached the hidden path near the river bend. The horse was there, saddled, restless. "You ride," Marek said, lifting her onto the saddle. "Ride north. I'll find another way." "No." Sansa grabbed his sleeve. "You'll die. I'll die here or on the road. Doesn't matter. What matters is you make it back to your brother." He tied a satchel to the saddle. Food, a blade, a change of clothes. Then he placed Robb's letter, now worn, blood-stained, and precious, back into her hand. "Remind him what it cost." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Come with me." Marek shook his head. "Wolves don't run in packs when they're hunted. One survives, the rest fight." She rode. Behind her, the city smoked. A new bounty would be posted by nightfall. 10,000 gold dragons for the return of Sansa Stark, alive or broken. And Robb Stark far away in the Riverlands would soon hear the words that changed everything. "Your sister is missing. The lions are roaring. The raven came at dawn." Robb Stark stood at the edge of the stone balcony in Riverrun, the early mist still clinging to the river below like ghosts too stubborn to leave. His fingers trembled slightly as he broke the wax seal already stained with someone else's blood. Catelyn watched him closely, arms crossed over her chest, dread painted across her face like war paint. He read the message once, then again. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "She's alive, Sansa. She escaped." Catelyn's hands flew to her mouth. How? When? With whom? But Robb's voice was like ice. Marek Snow and Elric Reed. They got to her and got her out. Catelyn's knees buckled, and she sank into the chair behind her. Thank the gods. Robb's grip on the scroll tightened. His jaw clenched. "Elric is dead." Catelyn looked up sharply, and Arya. There was silence. He shook his head once. No word. "The letter says she was already missing. Maybe dead." They couldn't find her. The room felt suddenly smaller, colder, and in that silence, something cracked in Robb, not loud, not explosive, but like a slow, deep fracture in stone. "They hung my men," he whispered, his eyes glassy with restrained rage. "In the streets of King's Landing, cut out their tongues, flayed one of them. Sent a message to the north." He turned to her. "They know it was me." Catelyn stood, slowly. "Then you must act like they expected, with fire, with fury." But Robb wasn't listening. His mind was already moving, already calculating. The cost, the weight of it all. He turned to Lord Bolton and Lord Karstark later that morning, eyes hard and voice unshaken. "No more negotiations, no more ravens. We march to we cut through the Riverlands like fire through wheat. I want every Lannister patrol burned. I want the Kingslayer's head on a spike before the next moon." "But your grace," Bolton started. "Enough," Robb roared. "They have stolen from Usamai's sisters, my father's name, my men's lives. Now they burn." Behind closed doors, Catelyn begged him to slow. "This is what they want, Robb. Rash moves, angry decisions." He shook his head. "This isn't anger, Mother. This is war." That same night, he wrote a reply for Sansa, a new letter. Short, tight, meant for her eyes alone. "You are the heart of Winterfell. You are not broken. Ride north. We will meet again, or we will die with our names on our lips." He handed it to a trusted courier mage, Mormont's youngest son, and ordered him to ride with the speed. of the gods, north, then east, then north again, until he found a lone girl on a lone horse, fleeing through broken land with wolves on her heels. But Robb knew something else now. The war had changed. The South didn't just want victory. They wanted the North broken, body by body, soul by soul. And so Robb changed, too. He sent ravens to the Umbers, the Glovers, the hill tribes, not asking for men but for killers. Quiet men, silent hunters, old oaths revived. He summoned the shadows of the North, the kind of men who burned villages without lighting a fire, who slit throats in silence and vanished into the snow. The boy king of the North was gone. What remained was something harder, sharper, hungrier. Meanwhile, far beyond his reach, Sansa Stark rode through bitter country, crossing fields turned red from war. Her hands bled, her body ached, but she held Robb's letter close, as if it were the only warmth left in a world that had grown crueler by the hour. Behind her, riders followed, not just gold cloaks, not just Lannisters, but others, men with no banners, men paid in whispers and coin, because the Queen Regent had declared a quiet order: bring me Sansa, Stark alive, or bring me her head. And in a world like Westeros, that kind of bounty stirred monsters from every corner of the realm. Sansa's horse stumbled on the loose gravel of the mountain pass, nearly throwing her into the jagged rocks. Her fingers gripped the reins tight, knuckles white, but she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She hadn't made a sound in 3 days. The wind howled through the vale, biting and cruel, as if it too had sworn allegiance to the Lannister. Snow began to fall, not gentle, but sharp as needles. Winter was coming, and she was alone. Marek had stayed behind to mislead the riders. His plan had been madness: double back, leave false tracks, fight if he had to. That was 4 nights ago. She hadn't seen him since. She wanted to believe he was alive, but she'd grown used to lies. Sansa Stark, once the pretty girl in silk, now wore a dead woman's cloak, a rusted dagger strapped to her thigh, and boots soaked in mud. Each step north brought her closer to home war, what remained of it. She didn't know if Winterfell still stood. She didn't know if Arya lived. But she had one thing they couldn't take: her name and Robb's letter. She read it every night, sometimes aloud in a whisper to remind herself her voice still worked. You are the heart of Winterfell. She repeated it like a prayer, but prayers didn't stop what came next. That evening, as she passed through an abandoned hamlet nestled in a snow-choked valley, she heard the faintest crack of twigs. Her horse stopped, ears flicked back. A shiver ran down her spine. She drew, the dagger heart-pounding. Out of the trees stepped a man in black, thin, quiet, a face half covered in soot. He didn't draw a weapon, he didn't speak, he just stared. Then 2 more appeared behind him, then a 4th. All of them wore rags, no sigils, no colors, but their eyes told her everything. Bounty hunters. Lady Stark, the first man said, grinning like a corpse. You've come a long way for a pretty grave. Sansa ran. The horse reared, almost bucked her off, but she dug her heels in and rode. The men shouted, gave chase. Crossbow bolts whistled past her ears. One nicked her sleeve, another struck a tree inches from her skull. She didn't look back. The road narrowed into thick woods. The snow deepened. Her horse faltered. Hooves slipped. Then bang, a thud. The horse collapsed beneath her. Sansa hit the ground hard. Her breath knocked out. Her leg twisted under. The saddle, The men were closing in. She tried to stand, but pain seared through her ankle. She crawled behind a tree, breath ragged, dagger clutched in one shaking hand. She would die here, alone, just like they wanted. Footsteps approached, then whistle, not a signal, a song, high, cold, familiar, the rains of Castamere, the sound of her enemies. She gritted her teeth, tears spilled silently, not from fear but fury. This is how it ends. A Stark girl, hunted like a deer. She raised the dagger, and then the trees exploded with motion. Arrows flew fast, precise, silent. One man dropped, gurgling blood. Another screamed as a spear found his chest. The third tried to flee, but a black hound tore through the snow and brought him down with a crunch. Sansa couldn't move. She stared in disbelief. From the shadows came 3 figures, wolves, no men of the north. The leader stepped into view, broad-shouldered, face covered in faded war paint, a bare pelt around his shoulders. His voice was rough and cold. "Lady Stark," he said, offering his hand, "we've been looking for you." She took it, numb, disbelieving. Who are you?" "Mage Mormont sent us," he said. "Your brother's orders." Sansa collapsed into the snow, relief overwhelming her. She hadn't been forgotten. Robb had sent wolves to find her, and they had come. They rode for days through valleys, dead villages, and frozen streams that crackled beneath their horses' hooves. The Northmen who found Sansa were silent, brutal men more shadow than soldier. They didn't speak unless they had to. Their leader, Will Mormont, bore scars from shoulder to jaw, and the way he looked at her wasn't with pity or awe, but something colder, respect. They fed her dried meat, gave her a cloak warmer than anything she'd worn in King's Landing, and treated her ankle with pine sap and wrappings. They called her my lady, but not in the flowery way she'd grown used to. It sounded more like a promise. When they crossed the neck, Sansa saw the banners, the direwolf of House Stark, flying again in the wind. It made her chest tighten. She thought of Arya, of her father, of the girl she used to be, the one who believed in songs and golden crowns. She was gone. What remained was forged in fire, lies, and blood. They reached Robb's camp just outside. Harrenhal at dusk. The sky was violet. The air reeked of burning. Robb's army had scorched 3 Lannister outposts in 2 days. No survivors, no mercy. When Sansa stepped down from her horse, half the men in the camp froze. Some fell to their knees, others whispered as if seeing a ghost. Robb came from his tent, armor still on, blood dried at the collar. He didn't say her name. He didn't move at first. Then, with the world watching, he stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. Sansa broke. She didn't sob loudly. It was quiet, just shaking, breathless, like all the weight she'd carried had finally found a place to fall. "I thought I'd never see you again," he whispered into her hair. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Later, in the command tent, Sansa told him everything about the escape, about Merrick Snow, about Elric Reed, about the bounty hunters, about the nightmare she had to live through in King's Landing. She left nothing out. When she was done, Robb stood silent, hands clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. "I sent 5 men," he said. "One made it home. Marek might still be alive," she said softly. Robb shook his head. "If he is, the gods are keeping him for something cruel." He turned to the map, looked at the Riverlands, the Westerlands, the red markers littered with pins. "You said Cersei wants you dead or broken," he murmured. "She wants the North to kneel," Sansa said, and me as the example." Robb's voice was quiet. "Then we give her something else instead." That night, he sent riders to every northern house, still loyal. His command was simple: no prisoners, no banners. For every head they take, we take 10. For every Stark blood spilled, we drown their lands in fire. Let the South feel the teeth of the wolf, and they did. Weeks passed, and the North fought like demons. Small villages were razed. Lannister strongholds fell silent. Men vanished in the night, their heads found on pikes with wolf fangs carved into their cheeks. They called them the ghosts of winter. Sansa remained in Robb's camp, healing. Slowly, her hands stopped shaking. She learned to ride again, learned to speak without stammering. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it was never soft. The girl who had left Winterfell was dead. In her place stood a woman shaped by thrones, knives, and ashes. One morning, a raven arrived. The seal was gold. The message simple: return the girl, or we send her brother's head back in pieces. It was signed by Tywin Lannister himself. Robb handed the letter to Sansa. She read it once, then calmly tossed it into the fire. She looked at Robb and said, "Send them yours first.